Hi everyone, Nombasa here. I hope everyone is keeping well. This is just a follow-up video, and I think I might be doing a lot of these because I think I'm keen to explore the topic, because I think after having posted about finding out about my estranged father's passing, a few of you guys sort of approached me in terms of really applauding me for sharing this story, but also sharing just a bit of how they need to, like how you need to own your story as well, in terms of moving on and healing. In terms of healing, I think that 2 years ago wouldn't have been more of a perfect time for me to find out that or that was no more, because I think it brought up a lot of issues that I needed to focus on, and issues that I needed to pay attention to in terms of my growth, in terms of my healing, and being released into freedom. And so I think that it was a blessing in disguise, although at that time it did not feel like it. It got me to take stock about where my life was in relation to him, in relation to just also my healing journey, and just introspect exactly what was internally happening. Because I think for me it came as such a it came as like a disenfranchised grief, which is just I had to sort of navigate the way I deal with it, reason with myself sometimes, and just sometimes feel the sadness that came with the thoughts around his death. And so I think that, one of the things that we always have to be real about when healing or on a healing journey, whether it takes us by surprise or we become intentional, because I think that sometimes when you're intentional, you do know, you come to acknowledge that you're intentional because you've come to acknowledge that something internally is not right. There's a bit of an unbalance. And it's so funny that my discovery about my dad's passing came just at a point when I thought I was on the brink of healing, because I had attended therapy, I had done sessions with my spiritual mentor. I thought I was there, and it took that discovery to find out, oh, actually I had healed to a certain point, and I think to a certain degree the work that I had done internally had sort of prepared me for that, because I do think that I would have maybe gone through a hectic nervous breakdown had I not prepared my heart. And I mean, as I said, I think it was definitely a blessing in disguise. And I think that it caused me to, as I said, to gather what was happening inside, what my reaction was, and how I was navigating around it. And so, I mean, obviously I had stopped therapy at the time I discovered his death. And what was happening then is that I was on this, because also I was based in Joburg then, and I was on a journey of just discovering new things. I was in a new province, and I felt like everything, because also when I found out, I had just graduated, right? And it's almost as if things were just coming together, and then boom, and so that actually also, I felt I needed to go back to therapy to just do some checks, not like for long, but just that time of grieving and sort of familiarizing myself with what exactly is going on internally. And so that's why I think as much as finding out those kind of things is never, at the time it's never great, but I think it came at a point where I had done all the work, but I think that was perhaps the missing element in my healing. And so I went back to therapy. And one of the questions my therapist left me with one week was, why it is that what it is about this that is causing me to go on such a deep, like, all just feelings towards my father, etc. And it's never something I had really thought about. And I guess that's the whole point of therapy, to ask you questions that you're able to come to conclusions to, reasoning fairly with yourself and being real, right? And so I actually sat and journaled, and I realized that, geez, man, I've never met this man. I don't know him. He passed on. And I realized then that I love him. I do. And I think when I started realizing that I need to actually come to terms with the truth, because I think sometimes, because we've been hurt by people, we don't like address the issue, which is, actually, I love this person. That is why we grieve. It's because we love, whether it's people who are estranged to us, who were supposed to be there, or people we've journeyed with closely. And I think as I came to that realization, like a light bulb moment hit me, that, okay, then this is when true healing begins, when I become honest about my take towards my father. And at the end of the day, I was not born to hate. I could, hate is so foreign to us. That's why it's crippling. That's why when we act out of fear, we are crippled. And fear is crippling just by its nature. I really relate fear and hate, along the same group. I group it the same, because when you're fearing, it means that there's a lie you believe in. And it just means that, even the hate that you are experiencing, it takes so much from you. And that's what fear does as well, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I realized that I was living in a tense space, and not a freedom space, because I was constantly fighting with thoughts of, like, how could this man do this? But also knowing that those questions came from a place of wanting closure, came from a place of wanting security, came from a place of wanting answers. But I realized that more than anything, I love this man. I was born of him. I mean, he's the reason why I'm here. And I think one of the reasons why I did not want to acknowledge that, I think, is because the world influence as well on how it speaks about absent fathers, right? And the world narrative of fathers has always been, hate, and I adopted to that. And also, obviously, because also I saw how sometimes my mom spoke about my dad. It was never a pleasant conversation. And so I think subconsciously I decided to sort of cover the truth with, rather, my instant reaction to just always stir up myself to say, I hate that man, I hate him, but I think sometimes that, like, even those emotions or even those recitations that you're telling yourself, you hate him, you're actually trying to convince yourself that you hate him, whereas even the fact that you're angry at him is because you love him, because you had certain expectations of what he should have played, So these are the narratives, like, I've been wrestling with. But I think it really dawned on me that in order really to be free, there needs to be truth, there's something that there's a story you tell yourself, about anything and everyone, or your mom, your father, whoever, and it's important to just introspect, like, why you're telling yourself that story. And I think what I love about the truth, it'll always come out. It always has it might be silenced for a long time. It might be covered up, because I think sometimes the lies, the hate, and the anger are louder than the truth. And so when you come to that place of being serene, when everything is being emptied out, when you ask the questions why, and when you're asked and are forced to be with yourself, you're forced to lay bare and just reveal what the real truth and the real story is about a certain matter, it's that the truth will come out. And I think for me, the truth that really led me to freedom was the fact that, listen, I love this man. I love this man. And from that point onwards, I could actually pinpoint and say, okay, I love him. He didn't do this. I had these expectations, because I think already we have from our parents, although they are unspoken, as we grow up, there is sometimes the voids that we feel should have been filled, but we only realize that in retrospect and maybe later on. And I think as soon as I came to that truth of the reason I had expectations from him, and even being pursued, wanting to be pursued, wanting him to walk in at some point in my life, is because I loved him. And I think that the parent-child bond, whether your parent is present or not, it's there. Like, it's just, I think it's just how nature works, that it should be a thing that we feel. Otherwise, I think that's one of the things that make us human, really. And so after realizing that, I had to then work out, so what does it mean to love him? And as much as, guys, I must say, like, we sometimes feel entitled, and rightly so. We feel like, they were supposed to do this and this and this and this. I realized that, you know what, through the lens of love for this man, I extended grace to him. I started to realize that he actually knew better, but there was something in him that couldn't do better. Okay. And that, what that means for me was that, come on, when you give birth to someone, when you are a father, when you're a parent, I'm not a parent yet, but there's an obligation. There's part of you that knows the responsibility that you're supposed to get, to contribute. And I realized that perhaps this man, because also after his death, I interacted with some of my, with my aunt, and I realized he was a troubled man. Apparently he was an alcoholic, and he actually he had TB. He was in and out of hospital most of his life, but also he didn't take care of his health. He was still, like, drinking and doing all those things. And so from that perspective, even as I, after establishing that, I love this man, even way before getting some information about the kind of person he is, what he did, etc., I just knew that as I said, I loved him. And the next thing to do was, after discovering all these things, I reasoned with myself, and I realized that he was not empowered to love. There was something in him that knew the truth about his responsibility towards me, his responsibilities towards me, whether, it's loving, provision, and he just couldn't step up and come to, the occasion. And now I realize that I cannot hold that against him, because you'll never make someone do what they don't want to do or can't do, or can't come to terms to do. And that freed me a lot, because I realized that as much as I know he loved me, because also the stories my mom told when I was around, he had such affection, but there was just a limit, a ceiling in his life of not, like, an inability to step up to the game. Maybe he saw that loving Unombasa and being there for her, I can't do. It's too much of a responsibility. I can't come to the party. But I can see that just in terms of the fragments of the stories I'm getting about him, is that the fact that he was an alcoholic screams volumes about what he was internally going through, right? And this is not me just psychoanalyzing, but also I think it's important that I move on for my own sake, for my healing, and I've done just that. So this is just to say that with even the friends that approached me regarding their own stories about fatherlessness, there's obviously two sides of the story, but nothing can ever justify your father or mother not being present. But for your sake of healing, gather the truth, not the story you're trying to tell yourself, and not the story that's been narrated to you, because also sometimes the stories that we've been told by our mothers or aunts, etc., they sometimes from this perspective of their hurt and how they were inflicted in the situation. And so I would just advise that you alone discover the truth that's residing in your heart beneath the lies, like that's been covered by the lies or by the narrative you've told yourself upon being hurt. Because I think sometimes also when we're really in deep places of hurt, there's things that we tell ourselves that form as a defense or a comfort. And so to just dig up the why, not the why to the person who's inflicted harm on you or who's deprived you of a relationship that you needed to have, but your why is it that it hurts so much. And also, one of the other things I might talk about later is just also how even throughout the years, yes, I was not fathered, but there were some present figures, and I think even coming into salvation cushioned me from a lot of things. But it's also been in the recent years that I really God, even now in this season, I feel very fathered by God. So I know that this has been very much all over, but it's a fragile topic. A lot of people don't want to go into it, but I think for me, it's so worth healing for the next generation, guys. It's so worth it to know where we've been wounded and the truth behind our wounds, so that we heal and we don't become what our absent parents were to us. We won't be perfect parents, but I think that it's better to be a healed parent than not, and just accepting the truth, acknowledging it, and forgiving. And I think when I started to have these journaling based on love, purely based on the fact that the truth that came to me as a revelation, that I loved this man, I began to just unlayer things, layer by layer, to just unravel them. so that I could move closer to my healing. And I can freely say that I've let go. I've freed him. Yes, there's days where a bit of grief comes and you're like, oh man, this could have been nice. And I do think that had I been, in relationship with my dad, I would have been such a daddy's girl, because I don't know, for some reason I have such a fondness towards him, though I've never met him, and apparently also just the way I'm wired. I've always known that I'm nothing. I am like somehow like my mom, but in the way I think, I've always wondered like her. But when my aunt told me a bit about him, it was that like the way I think and the way I'm wired, I am very much like him, and the only thing really, I can just thank God that I was born. And yes, it was through a man who chose to be absent, but I think there's a plan for our lives way before our parents meet. I think so. I'm convinced of that. Because I'm a Christian, and I fully believe in the plans of God for our lives. And I know that maybe some of you are at a place where you feel like hurt, you feel you're so wounded beyond repair because of what the people or parents or whoever walked out of your life. But there is a plan for your life, and my hope is just to really see a generation of people who are healed and whole, from parent wounds or fatherlessness, to walk in their true purpose and to know that they are loved, to know that there's a future for them, and that your story doesn't end at you having been rejected. It actually it will end well. It will end well. Just be real with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. Discover the truth about what you're feeling. Discover why you have a grudge against who you have a grudge. Discover why you're grieving. Discover also I was also chatting to a friend of mine who we just spoke elaborately about my previous video, and he himself is a father now, and he his dad has never been present, and he's still not, and I mean, this friend is in his 40s, I think. And for someone who knows better and can do better, the standard is much higher. When you know better and can actually do better and have that ability, and you're capable of doing better, of reaching out, reaching out, whether it's your father by loving him in any way, if it's not infringing or suppressing you in any way, and if you're in a liberal state to do that, I think I would implore you to do so, because I think more than anything, fathers, something they missed maybe in their childhood, I mean, now fathers who've been absent, there's probably something they missed in their childhood that they can never compensate for. And maybe perhaps by you reaching out to them, only if you're capable, if you're not in a state of being wounded and still, nursing your wounds. And so this friend of mine actually made it clear to me that, sometimes they're the ones that we need to reach out to, and not wait for them to do so, because honestly, you'll wait till Jesus comes back. But anyway, guys, thank you. I'm loving sharing this story, and if you are keen to chat, life_with_Nombasa on Instagram. And yeah, I think I'm very drawn to this topic, and I'm keen to share more, and maybe answer your questions. I'll also hopefully bring some friends who have healed or who are in the journey of healing, and much later though. But I really pray that you heal, and that you do the right thing that will leave you at peace, and that you'll keep introspecting, because I think healing is available. Forgiveness can actually, it can be a norm. Ciao. Thank you.